Hello, and welcome to Aviation 101 with Laura. So this is the third in the series of videos that have been sponsored by Listener.io, which I'm really excited about, and you're going to see why as we start our conversation here with Ryan. Listener.io, if you haven't checked them out, go check them out on their website. This is a place where pilots can seek counseling with complete confidence because Listener.io counseling visits are online. You can choose if you want to use your camera or not, and they are not reportable to the FAA on the MedExpress form, which we are going to be delving into a lot today with our guest, Ryan. So, Ryan, tell us about yourself, however much you want to share.
Okay. My name is Ryan Cardoza. I am graduating here at LeTourneau this year with a degree in mission aviation, which is a combination of flight training and maintenance training.
Cool. So you're a senior graduating, and reason I invited Ryan to talk on our interview here today is because he has worked pretty hard on getting his medical. In fact, I remember when you were one of my students at the beginning, and we kind of had some conversations about this. And then I was excited that when Ryan did get his medical and then did his flight training, how long did the process take? And let's just talk kind of about filling out the MedExpress form for those who might not be familiar with that.
Yeah, it took just over a year to get my medical approved. I filled out the application and submitted it, went and saw an AME, and the visit was really smooth. There were no problems with my visit except for the very end when the doctor said, I have to defer your medical back to Oklahoma because you checked the box that says depression next to it. And that started a long process of the FAA sending me snail mail and
paper mail.
Needing to collect documents from the counselor that I was visiting with to submit back to the FAA. And I had a lot of complications. My counselor had moved on from the practice that she was working at, didn't have full access to all of the medical records that she had written on my visits, and that led to more complications.
Okay. And so you say a year, that was like you filled out your MedExpress online and you went to your medical, and then it was like a whole year before you actually got your medical. That the FAA mailed it to you when you got it?
No, when they actually emailed it to me. So
okay.
It was
not snail mail.
one of the few medicals that you can print and make multiple copies of, because when the FAA sends it to you via email, it's not the actual printed out copy that they physically sign, and you can only have one copy of.
Okay. So you had marked the box for depression. You had some counseling visits, clearly, because you just mentioned about that. I want to unpack that a little bit. So once you mark that box, is that the reason that the AME or the medical examiner had to defer your application?
Yep.
So tell me more about the process. If you had to do it over again, and then we'll talk about what you actually had to go through for getting your medical.
Okay. If I could do it all over again, I would have reached out to my AME first and asked if he could help me work through my application, because I was meeting with the counselor, but I was not meeting specifically for depression. I was not diagnosed with depression. What I was going for, which my counselor didn't completely communicate to me, was what was called an adjustment disorder. I had lived overseas and I was transitioning back to the U.S., and part of that, like reverse culture shock, needed a professional to work through to help me get readjusted back into life in the States. And so hopefully my AME would have said, oh, we have a different category for that, and don't check depression. Instead, come in and we can talk about that.
Right. Because if you're going to counseling visits, so like our friends at Listener.io offering, you can go to those counseling visits and the FAA actually says don't report these on line 19 or item 19, I guess is a checkbox thing, right? So you really, I guess, did not have to report those visits at all. Okay, so but you did because it was unclear, and I understand for sure you're trying to be truthful on the form, and you're like, I'm going to be a pilot, I'm going to be a good pilot, and I'm going to answer the questions, and you had marked depression on the form, so that caused your medical to get deferred. Why don't you talk about what actually happened then? So what actually did you go through after marking that?
So at the end of the visit, the doctor shared with me that he'd have to send my medical application to Oklahoma for deferral. And I went home and I waited for a message from the FAA on what to do next. I want to say it was probably about 2 months later, and I received another
Paper letter
from the FAA that said, we're going to need all your medical history. And the counselor who I had been visiting with had moved on to a different practice. So it was kind of impossible at that point to get that medical information from her. And then the FAA didn't tell me what to do after that. So I responded back to the FAA and said I couldn't get my medical records from the counselor that I was meeting with. And that was when they shared, well, we're going to need you to meet with a psychologist and do another mental evaluation, and then provide that report. We recommend that you go to a HIMS provider. It's a specific provider for substance or alcohol abuse or mental health conditions, and they can do a evaluation that the FAA understands and desires, and then they can send that report back.
So you have to go to a HIMS provider, which actually you don't have to. The FAA just suggests it, but they don't really tell you where to find one or how to do anything about that. So what did you do?
Yeah, I didn't find out about a HIMS provider or HIMS providers until I came to LeTourneau. At LeTourneau, I was connected with a professional in industry who shared about HIMS providers and recommended a specific HIMS provider to me, which I reached out to, and we were able to get a meeting. I think it was about a 2-month wait for him as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you have a 2-month delay to get a paper letter from FAA. And then how long does all the waiting, or you sent stuff back, you're trying to get the counselor records, and then you have another 2-month wait for the HIMS provider. What was that visit like?
Yeah, the HIMS provider was great. I traveled to Florida for that.
Wow.
So Texas to Florida, quick trip just to go for a 2-hour interview. But prior to that, the FAA sends you a letter to approve releasing all of your medical records to this provider. So the provider had all of my medical records from the FAA. He reviewed them. And then when I went and we met, he talked for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, just asking me questions, seeing how I'm doing. And after that, he writes up a formal report, sends that to the FAA, and it's the waiting game again for the FAA to review. And
so he sends it back. He sent it back to Oklahoma City, which is their aeromedical headquarter place. How long did that take? Do you recall? I'm sure it's another several months. Nothing's fast.
I think it was about 3 months probably.
Okay,
after
another 3 months of waiting.
Yeah.
Wow. With no update, right? Because they're not telling you anything.
Yeah.
Wow. So did the HIMS provider, are they able to say anything like, I think you're fine, or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I left the HIMS provider feeling great.
Yeah.
He assured me like there shouldn't be any complications with you getting your medical approved.
Okay.
And just shared that he'll send the paperwork overnight to Oklahoma City, and then it's just at their discretion.
Right. So I guess at least you left there with some glimmer of hope for this process, which, and I feel like it's very challenging for pilots, especially those who are entering the industry and they really don't know what even to expect from a medical certification process. So I think what's super key, couple takeaways I think that our viewers can get is if you have concerns like box 18 on the Med Express, or item 18, is like list your medical history. And it has a whole group of checklist boxes. And then you have item 19, which is listing all your visits to health professionals in the last 3 years. Now, we already talked about the listener.io option for your counseling needs as a pilot. It's a safe place to do that, and you wouldn't have to report it on 19. 18, that's your whole medical history, and that's where I guess just not knowing you had marked depression, and it ends up being like a self-diagnosis code, which actually triggered everything else that went on from there. So I think the takeaway that you have said that's helpful is to go to a medical professional, specifically an aviation medical examiner, but not with your form already filled out. Like, you can look at the form and you could can you save progress on the form? I think you can, right? I don't know if you can.
I'm not sure.
It, but you can look at the form, and then if you have something on the form that concerns you, go talk to the aviation medical examiner, get their input, and then maybe complete the form, and then do your medical appointment. So I think that's what other takeaways? Do you have any other takeaways for the process you want to share?
Yeah, I would say that we as non-medical professionals are not medical professionals, so don't self-diagnose.
Don't self-diagnose.
If you have depression, you should know that you have depression because a medical professional who is licensed to tell you that you have depression has told you that you have depression.
Diagnosed you.
Yeah.
Right. And counselors, the ones at listener.io and other ones, like at the counseling center that's at the school where Ryan attends, where I teach, they can't diagnose anybody with depression because they're not even able to actually do that or prescribe any medications for depression. So if you need some mental support, you should definitely seek help. Just realize that does not mean you have to check box 18 saying you have depression when you're completing the FAA medical form. So, well, thank you very much for being here, Ryan. I really appreciate it. And make sure you guys like and subscribe. Check out listener.io. Use promo code Laura for a special discount, and I'll have all the details in the video description. Have a great day.